Good morning and happy Sabbath. Lovely to see who's online. I won't mention any names, but yes. And I'll just say welcome back where one member is. Good to see. Anyway, we are going to begin with a word of prayer, and then I'll introduce and we'll get started. So where you're able to, let's just kneel and we'll begin with prayer. Dear gracious, loving God, we thank you so much for the holy Sabbath day. And wherever we are on this globe, whichever time zone, we are able to worship together in spirit and in truth. And we delight knowing that there are other like-minded believers in our community of faith. It encourages all. And we just hold up each one. And we pray especially for our worldwide elders, Elder Perminder and Elder Tess. And we just thank you for the light that just keeps flooding along the path. And from our midnight cry, as well as Jesus raising his holy right arm and wafting his precious light and truth and spirit to encourage us as we travel these last steps. So we ask for your presence with us now, and be with each one. And we just thank you for providing us the messages of the hour. We pray that it will be a message that many in the world will yet receive before time has ended. We also want to hold up our Brazil School of the Prophets that is going to be coming soon. And may all the logistics and preparations be smooth. We just ask you for the continued blessings. Elder Parminder presents and others. Be with each one and be with me now. In Jesus' name and for his sake. Amen. Yes, I appreciated your opening prayer, Elder Tabo. It wasn't on the recording, but auspicious times that we're in. And I didn't feel satisfied at the end of the last study. I had sort of hoped to have tied things off at that point and felt that I hadn't. So I thought, continue the theme one more time for this study and hopefully be able to conclude in it. But as you all, I know, have come to appreciate, this testing message is not only huge, it contains a lot, but it also is profound. And so we'll allow God to guide and direct us this day as we just proceed and go through some of the other things that I wanted to either add in or re-mention. And this study is based on, as I've got down the left, well, if it appears on the left-hand edge of your screen, on the book by Angela Saini, the Patriarchs, as well as a couple of the articles that were in our WhatsApp Bible study group posted there. But Elder Parminder also made reference to, because I'm also leaning on some of the highlights from his study, The Fragility of Patriarchy, done back in March of this year, and as well the studies. I think it's actually 5, because the October 24th one was done originally in Australia. And the rest, I think, were done in France, being host. But at any rate, Elder Tessa's messages on feminism, wealth of information there. And then I'll be going through, well, as we start, I'm going to just give a synopsis. Well, actually, I won't give the synopsis. I'll leave you a cliffhanger just as we proceed. But I am going to begin with definitions, and I didn't put it into PowerPoint, and I'm not going to share screen at all. Just read things out, and there are a couple as well that I may add in. Just minimize this a little bit and move over. Yes, so you guess what the first definition is? You'd probably be wrong if you were guessing. Just bring it up. The first word is sexism. Does anyone want to jump in with a definition of sexism? Obviously, I've got one, but feel free if you want to unmute at all. What is sexism?
It's prejudice. Prejudice or discrimination on the basis of sex, but it's typically against women.
Okay, very nicely stated, Tabo. And that word prejudice, discrimination, in a sense, I won't say that they are interchangeable. Prejudice, prejudging, but we bring our preconceived ideas and many times things that we've been taught, raised with, these cultivated and inherited tendencies to evil, the habits and the inclinations, the way we lean. I put it as the term feminist used to explain how social inequalities between men and women are reinforced and upheld through norms, values, attitudes. So it's social, societal mores and norms. It's our own values and belief system and our own attitudes that we gain through life, from a variety of sources. And then to succinctly put what you just stated, it's prejudice or discrimination based on sex, especially discrimination against women, which fosters stereotypes of social roles based on sex. That's man's work, that's woman's work. And for me, I added in the oldest form of discrimination existing on earth, and it is the root out of which all other forms of oppression spring. So therefore, the focus norms, values, attitudes, and basically Elder Tess was saying that's what needs to change. We would summarize it perhaps as mindset, our mindset. And I'm going to read a couple of examples, or for this definition, one example. This was a couple of these definitions I took from the Merriam-Webster, which was one of the ones that Elder Tess had used. And the examples are just current, modern day kinds of examples. You know how a dictionary usually uses the word in a sentence and gives an example of its usage. So that's what this is. And we won't comment. In her homeland, Ms. Kim, 32, struggled with the grind of a hyper-competitive society where success is defined narrowly and young women face diminishing labor prospects, grueling work schedules, sexism, and restrictive beauty standards. And that was Elda Cantu, Marian Carrasquillo, New York Times, July 21st, 2023. Next definition, feminism. Belief in and advocacy of, and picking up on Jonathan's study from last week, belief in and advocacy for, we could possibly say that's faith. Belief in and advocacy of the political, economic, and social equality of the sexes, and expressed through actions. And likewise, we could, picking up on Jonathan's study of last week, possibly call that works, upholding women's rights and interests. And the examples, rainbow flags were in abundance, as was Kelly green, the color of global feminism and reproductive rights around the world. That's Alex Dalton, Chicago Tribune, August 1st, 2023. By producing a film that triggers Gen X and millennial moms' nostalgia and offers corporate feminism in a goofy, beautiful package, Mattel is putting a new irony light gloss on the Barbie brand. That's Alexandra Lange, the New Yorker, on 2nd of August this year. Last one. Notably, Barbie has sneaked past China's notoriously stringent censors, despite the film tackling issues of feminism and toxic masculinity and featuring prominent LGBTQ plus characters. And that's Abed Rahman, the Hollywood Reporter, from July 31st, 2023, just on the heels of the Barbie movie being released. Next definition, patriarchy. Social organization marked by the supremacy of the father in the family, clan, tribe, whatever, with a disproportionately large share of power. The legal dependence of wives and children. And that brings me to another word that I just wanted to unpack the definition of. We've possibly heard of that word, coverture. And it is, originally, it means a covering, a shelter, concealment. That's its first definition. But it also in law, English common law, as it is, means the status of a married woman considered as under the protection, that's the covering, and authority of her husband. So coverture. And as we know, women's rights moved along so slowly that in the US in the 1970s, it was still a situation whereby a woman couldn't sign a contract, a woman couldn't get a credit card, a woman basically didn't have a lot of different rights without her husband signing on her behalf, or somebody, and some of that situation still exists in different cultures and nations around the world to this day. And the legal and being patrilineal. So patriarchy generally encompasses being patrilineal. You can sort of guess the root word there, the line. So the line of inheritance and descendancy comes through the male line. And as we know, our Old Testament scriptures are very much patterned that way. So an example, Many of her clients were raised by elders with untreated intergenerational trauma, oftentimes related to their own migration, poverty, or history of abuse, as well as ultra-conservative and fundamentalist beliefs rooted in religion, white supremacy, and patriarchy. Nicole Frau on a website, and July 25th, 2023. Others reflected on the realities of Chinese women face, with one remarking dryly that unlike the US, a little bit of sarcasm there, China doesn't even pretend not to be a patriarch. And that was from CNN, Jesse Yoon, in July. And last one, in trying to console Margot Robbie's Barbie, who's in the throes of her own existential crisis after the Kens turned Barbie land into a patriarchy, Ferrera's Gloria, a Mattel employee and mother, this is the human character in Barbie, speaks plainly to the greater painful truth of being a woman in America. And that was from a magazine in July. And last definition at this point that we're going to unpack, and actually for a moment, I'm going to go back to three that I didn't put on the whiteboard and I didn't put into slides, dealing with sexism and gender. Gender determinism, sort of a word that is utilized. Angela Saini uses the term gender depression, but gender determinism, common prejudice some people hold to, where gender is determined solely by biology, that men and women are fundamentally different, it's a natural difference, and that it cannot change. And these differences determine their personalities, behaviors, and abilities. Gender determinism. For example, women are naturally better at looking after children than men. Another example, men are naturally better at math and science. Hence a lot of the bias in the scientific world. And I would posit that they suggest that the race equivalent could be something along the lines, one race equivalent could be something along the lines of African Americans, whether male or female, are better athletes than Caucasians, than whites. And gender determinism tends to cause prejudice against transgender people. The other two terms I'm quickly going to unpack to do with sexism is a term cissexism, the word cis, C-I-S, the prefix sexism. You know what cisgender is, but cissexism causes sexism against transgender people, because people who hold to cissexism believe that gender is determined solely by biology, and they can't figure out how even being transgender is possible. And they refuse to accept that transgenderism exists. So cissexism. And another term is heterosexism, and that's discrimination or prejudice against non-heterosexual people. We could say homophobia, but against non-heterosexual people based on the belief that heterosexuality is the only norm and the only natural expression of sexuality. So just wanted to get those into the record, and might be terms that you have encountered just in the course of studies and so on. But anyway, Egalitarianism is the last term on the way forward, but a belief in a human social equality. Just get a drink of water. As my husband will attest, since the fires in Alberta at the beginning of whatever month it was, yeah, I have really struggled with my voice. And it has been rough a lot of the time. So hopefully it will smooth over as we proceed. So egalitarianism, a belief in human social equality, political equality, economic equality, and I added in a fourth, emotional equality. In other words, inferring that men are emotional beings as well as women, and people of other gender orientations as well are entitled to have and display their emotions to the degree that they feel comfortable. Anyway, and egalitarianism advocates for the removal of all inequalities and inequities amongst people. 2 examples in usage. The civil rights movement called into question the United States self-image as a bastion of liberal egalitarianism, and rightly so. And that's from Foreign Affairs, author in December of 2020. Those sentiments echoed the feelings of protesters, many of them young, in recent days, rekindling a deeply sensitive subject in France, where authorities prefer not to talk about race and discrimination in a country that prides itself on egalitarianism. And that was back in July of this year from the Boston Globe, commenting on some of the rioting going on in France. And much of the, the French Revolution is a long time behind us, but at the same time, a lot of the principles of it, people are identifying today as they're protesting patriarchy and control. Let's put it that way. And just as a part of our review before we add on to other things, I'm going to just quickly have a look at this does harken back to the previous study. Quickly have a look at, we're still talking about feminism, but more with the patriarchy focus of it. And I'll just preface now, so I don't forget later on that in the previous studies, we have gone through the waves of feminism. I'll just mention again that in 2006 was the first time that the metaphor of wave was used in reference to the feminist movement. And quite a few feminists didn't like that metaphor, but at the same time, it stuck. So first wave feminism, 1848, beginning sort of what we mark on the timeline is the Seneca Falls, New York Women's Convention. But 1848 to 1919/20, the suffragists and the 19th Amendment giving women the vote. Second wave feminism, 1963 to 1989. And we'll talk more about that as we go along. But third wave feminism, 1991 to the present, sort of sparked afresh by the situation with Anita Hill coming forward as Clarence Thomas was just due to be confirmed in the Senate hearings to become a justice of the Supreme Court. And that gave a tremendous impetus to feminism as the outcry ensued and fairness of it all. And then we had spoken a little about a fourth wave of feminism, and some feel that a fourth wave did begin and continues to this day. I'm just going to leave it there. We're just going to leave, because feminism itself fell into such confusion, and there were splinterings. Cultural, radical feminism came out of cultural feminism, actually. And so all the different factions of feminism, we've coalesced it for our purposes into three, which we'll get to in a moment, just a bit of a review. But at the same time, it is a good thing that we can learn how to make distinctions amongst the different types of feminism, because there's quite a bit of gray area, and in some cases a little bit of let's put it this way, a little bit of I won't say overlap, but a little bit of remaining confusion, perhaps. So anyway, the line of the 144,000 with its 5 waymarks, and not sure, I meant to bring up my eSword, but possibly if anybody's willing to bring up on their device scriptures, I'm going to just initially have us read 4, if that's all right, if somebody's willing to read it audibly into the record, instead of me taking time to fumble around. So Daniel 11:40, Daniel 11:41, Daniel 12:1, and 1 Thessalonians 4:16. I'm just picking those, just in a sense to sort of highlight. I didn't pick one for 2001, but we're just going to move along the timeline. And I just wanted quickly to have us hear those scriptures again. So if anyone's willing to read, I would be grateful.
Would you mind reciting them again, Debby?
Daniel 11:40 is the first one. And Tebo, if you take it, I'll let you read Daniel 11:41 too, just so that we don't put someone else on the spot. But be ready with Daniel 12:1. Somebody else, please. So go ahead.
Daniel 11:40, 41. And it reads, "And at the time of the end shall the king of the south push at him, and the king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind, with chariots and with horsemen and with many ships. And he shall enter into the countries and shall overflow and pass over. He shall enter also into the glorious land, and many countries shall be overthrown. But these shall escape out of his hand, even Edom and Moab and the chief of the children of Ammon."
Excellent. And of course, that Daniel 11:40 we equate with 1989, when Daniel 11:40 to 45 was coming into prominence and being unpacked by Elder Jeff in our movement. The word countries, and then so that 1989 waymark, 2001 waymark, 9/11, but on the line of the 144,000, refer more to 2001 because it encompasses so much more than just simple. And then we've got the increase of knowledge and the formalization. It happens, both of those happen in every waymark, in every dispensation rather, as we know. But for the period 2001 to the Sunday law, the increase of knowledge was marked by 2019. I'll come back to it in a moment. formalization marked by Panion, and where Daniel 11:40, pardon me, 41 fits, of course, is at our Sunday law. And again, I say the many, the word countries after it is italicized, and it's an added word. So the many being overthrown in our movement, we're equating with many within our movement at the Sunday law, notwithstanding also it being the close of probation for the institutions. Just leave it there for the moment. And so where we are on the line is approaching the Sunday law. Formalization to Sunday law, we've referred to it as the agitation of the Sunday law, the formalization, pardon me, increase of knowledge. That was originally when gender began to be unpacked. As we know, increase of knowledge, things increase, and towards the formalization, and eventually to the test. But formalization included apis bull theology, the radical feminism, not just feminism, but radical feminism, as well as LGBTQ+. So we can see how formalization has brought us further along to this point. And Sunday law to the close of probation, and this is where we'll read, perhaps we have an increase of knowledge. So there is going to be more information. Formalization, and Elder Tess in her messages makes the point that, she actually was originally answering a question, will there be, in other words, can people step off the path during the harvest? And she said, definitely. And she was referencing that at the formalization, during the loud cry, she'll still be talking about sexism and gender equality, because there's so much more for us to have to learn. Even after the Sunday law, there will be things to be learned. And then close of probation. So if somebody else wants to read Daniel 12:1, this, as we know, is the close of probation on the world. Daniel 12:1. Does somebody have it?
I can read it, Debbie.
Thank you, Jonathan.
And at the time of the end shall Michael stand up, the great prince, which standeth children of thy people, and there shall be a time of trouble such as never was since there was a nation, even to that same time. And at that time thy people shall be delivered, everyone that shall be found written in the book.
Thank you. And I think in Elder Parminder's last two sets of messages, he was bringing out a little bit more that an allusion, at least my interpretation of some of what his words were, that there are going to be some more dire times ahead for us, most definitely. And we've always known as Adventists, close of probation on the world, that's it. Revelation 22, he that's filthy will remain filthy. He that's righteous will be righteous, and so on. And so it's a very solemn time that we're approaching. Sunday law, yes, midway, but we don't know the time frame with how rapidly the other dispensations could possibly unfold, and close of probation to the second advent. And last scripture, just simply about the second coming, 1 Thessalonians 4:16. If somebody would like to just quickly read that.
Is that,
I can read it.
Thank you, Ally. I think that was, couldn't tell who else it was, but go ahead, Ally.
okay, First Thessalonians 4:17. Then we
Yes.
which are
Six-
alive, oh, sorry. Then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and so shall ever be with the Lord.
Amen. And that's the day we are looking forward to. And enduring to the end, right? Forgive me, just I want to set up something here because we're going to go through the slide, but I wanted to set it up a little bit more. I'm going to share screen, and what we're going to move to right now quickly is an overview of the 3 different kinds of feminism, and sort of review, but also add into and do a little bit of discussion perhaps as well on some of the points, but just see about screen share now. Okay, and actually I'll just my cursor. I'll just put this into the. Okay. I wanted to, because I know that screens are very difficult to see sometimes, depending on the camera of the thing. So the different 3 previous studies. Looking for my forward arrow. Do it just by clicking, but sometimes it bounces it. So that's what we had done previously on cultural, liberal, and radical feminism. And I'm just going to take us to the next screen, which you'll be able to read far better than me, writing it up again and getting you to do it. So I wanted to highlight the cultural first. Oh, I misspelled feminine. You can forgive me. Feminine essence and natural difference between men and women. Feminine ethics of care, this nurturing idea. And men and women of equal value. I'm going to stop it there. And now we're just going to go to liberal, also known as mainstream feminism, and just sort of do a bit of a comparison contrast. Well, I'll say contrast. Personal is not political. They'll be involved with trying to get things changed, but it's always with the idea of working within the structures and not shaking up anything. Second bullet, biology makes men and women different. So they're very focused. They would be some of the ones that would hold to cissexism and heterosexism, not necessarily, there are liberal feminists that are okay with gays, but at the same time, the majority of them do believe biology. There's a difference of biology, male to female. They embrace femininity. I'm really misspelling my femininity, double syllable. Anyway, And for them, liberal feminist appearance is important. So you can have makeup, you can have high heels, you can wear sexy clothes, you embrace your sexuality, and at the same time, you're fighting for your rights. Okay, and we'll pause there for a moment and go over to radical feminism. Of course, this is where the personal is political. They recognize that gender differences exist, but that all genders are equal in gender orientations. Radical feminism is the group that definitely has moved to fully embrace LGBTQ+. And they believe in the emotional equality aspect that isn't necessarily upheld in cultural or liberal feminism, whereby the other two differentiate, female, this nurturing, caring, compassionate. Therefore, women can have tears and nobody thinks anything of it. In some cases, they'll actually think, well, yeah, women are pretty emotional beings. But at the same time, radical feminists believe more in terms of emotional equality. Anyone can be affected by things happening. They can have be sensitive to what's going on and the inequities and the oppression, etc. Emotional equality. Okay, moving back to cultural. Inclusion, down to the 5th point, inclusion of women helps society. So boy, we need more women on the committee, to level off some of the aggression of the men. And we'll just, we need the women, they're the fairer sex. We want our women included, but and as a consequence, there's development of female-centered spaces. There's an emphasis on inclusion of women in history, and they want to embrace women, but in a sense, it's in a condescending way, hidden, couched underneath. Okay, going over to liberal mainstream. If a woman chooses, she's empowered. So it's all about individual choice, individual freedom. And in the course of time, liberal feminists have decided to appropriate the insults. I've forgotten now who it was. At one time did know, a couple of weeks back, but whatever. One of the women that was especially insulted by Donald Trump. And she ended up retweeting back and basically agreed with him. Yeah, yes, I'm a, such and such, and I look forward to meeting you and we can talk about it more, kind of thing. But at any rate, appropriating some of the insults, owning them and running with it. And as opposed to, and I'll read the next one, make changes for women within the existing social and political structures. We already had mentioned, but going over to the radical side again, just a little bit of the contrast. The radical feminists, right from the very beginning, and they weren't necessarily even labeled, it was still back in the days of it was a feminist movement, were very much looked on, through the era of the suffragettes and first wave feminism, they were very put down, insulted, incarcerated in some cases, certainly in Britain, and raped and otherwise abused, and just mocked and caricatures of the women who were bold enough to stand up for women's rights and push for having equal access to the vote. And I mean, this attitude sort of has continued through time, and where the liberal feminists definitely want only, they've got to have some attractive women, some of the Hollywood stars or other famous people that are attractive as a part of the movement. Otherwise, they're not going to impress anybody, kind of attitude, which speaks to their whole ethic, what they believe, as opposed to radical feminists get beyond appearance. And they receive insults, yes, they're misapplied insults and put downs, but it's sort of like water off a duck's back. They don't let it bother them, but they just attribute it to a patriarchal system and a society that needs to be turned upside down. Anyway, going to the last couple of points, back to cultural. Cultural builds female self-esteem. And this is where you get things posted or in various documents or in speeches or whatever. This kind of, condescending sort of view that, oh, aren't women wonderful? We sure need them, and this kind of thing, and building female self-esteem by, praising them and letting them know that we value them. Men and women are of equal value in cultural feminism, but at the same time, it only goes so far. Oh no, we draw the line at women's ordination or female priests or whatever it is. And then moving over to liberal mainstream, builds female self-esteem. This is girl power, right? This is, you can be anything you want to be. You choose it and go for it kind of feminism, where it is obviously the emphasis on building women up. They've been downtrodden and ignored a little bit. And therefore we want to really build them up. And you're fine just as you are. These kinds of things. But at the same time, hey, you know what? You're a female, you're feminine. So embrace your femininity. And yes, you can wear makeup and you can dress sexy and et cetera, et cetera. So building female self-esteem, as opposed to radical feminism, builds female self-worth. Just by existing, females are worth everything. Just by the fact that they exist. They don't have to do anything. They don't have to have a certain job giving them value. They don't have to have a certain income giving them value. They don't have to have a certain role in society that gives them value. They are valuable in and of themselves, every female. And I would add, every person that has a uterus, is of value just because they exist. And so moving to the bullet over on cultural again contains Catholics and non-Catholics. Cultural feminism, liberal mainstream feminism, it branched a little bit. There's probably more than one, but lipstick feminism is one, and it probably speaks for itself a little bit. And in radical feminism, there have been in more recent times sort of a change of support amongst some of the radical feminists, and it has stemmed around transgender inclusion or not. So the rad femmes are still a voice, but TERFs, the transgender exclusionary radical feminists that keep these trans women out of sports. They're really a man, so they shouldn't be allowed to compete against women, kind of attitude. So you can see some of the splintering. And then just quickly to finish off with the examples, cultural feminism, Pope Francis, a couple of names I've never heard of, but Mary Daly and Adrienne Rich. And then actually I'll get to that in a moment. And the examples in liberal mainstream, I use just very contemporary ones. America Ferrera, Greta Gerwig, and Margot Robbie. And they are affiliated with the Barbie movie. So America Ferrera is the actor that plays Gloria, the female person in the movie where to the two dolls, Ken and Barbie. Anyway, Greta Gerwig is the director and probably going to be up for all sorts of different awards. Margot Robbie is the producer of the Barbie film, but also the actor who plays Barbie. Under the radical column, the examples, us. And I wanted to put in, I should have put it in a different order, but Ann Hopkins is the Price Waterhouse v. Hopkins woman who did not conform to societal norms when she was trying to become a partner in Price Waterhouse, now Price Waterhouse Coopers. But at any rate, she was overlooked 2 years in a row. After the second year when she was overlooked, she quit, and then she took the company to court. But in the process, prior to her departure, one of her managers had said, things like, well, just, wore makeup and walked more femininely, whatever that is, and wore jewelry, got your hair done, styled. So Ann Hopkins, Hillary Clinton, and Greta Thunberg. And the very last point there, under each of them, cultural, will combine with liberal feminists in opposition to radical feminists. In other words, as time continues, the movement, which will be combining the right kind of feminism plus all of the loud cry light being given to the world, the other two forms of feminism are going to be, which will encompass basically the rest of the world, will obviously be against. And liberal mainstream is the largest group, which is why it's called mainstream. Feminism has sort of spread, and a lot of people label and say, oh, I'm a feminist, when in reality, are they really? When you start unpacking what it is they believe or what they support, what they don't support, it's liberal feminism, mainstream feminism, popular feminism. Became cool, right? Be a feminist. And then the radical feminist group, smallest, worldwide. And I think we can leave the screen share at that for the time being. Just get out of my, well, actually, maybe what I'll do is forward it in readiness. There we go. Okay. I also have to I'll minimize it. I don't see the screen on Zoom. So I'm going to very quickly do something that's going to put a few people on the spot. Only if people don't jump in at all. Because I'm just quickly going to do a little bit of a quiz. What type of feminism? And there's three choices: cultural, liberal, it's a smaller word than mainstream, so we'll go with liberal, or radical. And I may just pick on people, if that's all right. And this is it's sort of like feminism from 1991 on. You know, a lot of well, I'll use the expression gray area. So it's not written in stone, you know, that the answer is such and such kind of feminism. You know, there's leeway and so on. But I just want us to quickly just go through and see if we can guess. And what I may do, you know, with the participants list, and you can let me know if you're not able to speak, or let Tabo know in the chat or something. But I'll just maybe just run down through. No, just random order. I mean, I'll go from top to bottom with the participant list, but the examples are in no order, and you can just pick and choose. And then maybe we can, at the end, just even discuss it or whatever. So, and I'll tell you after each quote, after the person gives their answer or whatever, who it was that's I'm quoting, okay? So, which type of feminism? When haters go after your looks and differences, it means they have nowhere left to go. And then you know you are winning. Okay, Tabo, sorry, you're first on the list. I was forgetting myself, was waiting for someone to jump in, but Tabo, I'll ask you first. Do you think that's, type of feminism do you think that is? When haters go after your looks and differences, it means they have nowhere left to go. And then you know you're winning.
I guess that's tricky. It's not a whole lot to go on.
I know one little statement is not much. And as I say, it's not arbitrary at all. So just jump in there and give a guesstimate is what you think it is.
Well, I guess the thing is, it's something encountered by most feminists that, you know, whether it's liberal or radical, when they start critiquing patriarchy or how or you know, how they're responded to when they push back against patriarchy is, rather than receiving a critique of their thinking or their choices, they get attacked on how they look, right? Across the waves of feminism, that's a hallmark of the type of opposition feminists have received. So
feminists in particular, because one group of feminists wants to keep their appearance up, so to speak. So which group of feminists doesn't care about appearance? And when others are attacking on appearance, and of course, barbs hurt, right? You're ugly. You know, I mean, somebody getting told you're too ugly to rape. I mean, how offensive is that? You know?
Radical.
Well,
Thank
it's
Okay. No, Trevor's correct. The you know, and who stated it? You know, the reason I'm not giving you the person who stated it first maybe would give the answer away in a sense. Any guesses? Is anyone familiar with that quote?
Greta
Greta Thunberg. Yeah,
Yes.
Greta Thunberg, Ali.
Hmm.
Good job. Excellent. Okay. Second quote is for Katja. If you're in hearing, Katja. No one can make you feel inferior without your consent. A woman is like a tea bag. You never know how strong it is until it's in hot water. And I'll just say as well, if a person with any one of these quotes you want to say, you know, it could be this or something like that, you're not quite able to distinguish, that's fair enough too. Katja, did you hear?
Yes, I heard.
Okay, sorry.
That was theoretical.
Okay, and this one's not as clear, possibly as what the first one might have been. So maybe it could be liberal or radical. It's actually, sorry, go ahead. Katja.
No, sorry, that was Mark.
Oh, was it Mark? Hello, Mark. Happy Sabbath. It was Eleanor Roosevelt. And she, of course, was involved with the UN Declaration of Human Rights. Number 3, I recognized that the soft powers are the essential powers. You don't have to be a girly girl and splash pink all over, but there's also no reason to hide it. I did not need to act or dress like a man to succeed in business. I became Barbie in the boardroom. And sorry, whose turn? Ali. I should have said the name first, so you'd really be listening. So Ali, I'll repeat it for you. I recognize that the soft powers are the essential powers. You don't have to be a girly girl and splash pink all over, but there's also no reason to hide it. I did not need to act or dress like a man to succeed in business. I became Barbie in the boardroom.
I'd say that's liberal feminism.
Okay. Yes, and that's sort of how I pegged it. Cultural flavors in there a little bit in terms of the soft powers are the essential powers, but I believe this person would be categorized more as a liberal feminist. It was Shelley Zalis, or Zalis maybe, founder and CEO of the Female Quotient. Okay, this one. Patriarchy, misogyny, and sexism had a huge head start by the time we joined the race. Oh, Carlton, boy, I'm sleeping at the switch here. Carlton, sorry, it's your turn. Are you able to answer? I can reread it again because of my mistake. Patriarchy, misogyny, and sexism had a huge head start by the time we joined the race.
Radical feminism.
You know, and it very well could be. Possibly some flavorings of liberal. The person saying that is Tarana Burke. She was the one that started Me Too in 2006, seeking help for girls, women suffering from sexual abuse, sexual harassment, sexual assault. When it took off in October of 2017, when the one actor posted on Twitter, and Harvey Weinstein had been happening and just different other things, and the whole thing went viral for a period of time. She eventually did, Tarana Burke did embrace it because, you know, it surprised her. At first she was against it because she wasn't really into social media and so on. But at the same time, it definitely is radical sounding. Certainly was in 2006. Possibly she herself really would sit maybe more a little bit in liberal feminism on some aspects. So, but radical, we'll leave it at. Number 5, David. David or Effie, either of you, on your mic. Women as oppressed people act out of necessity, not out of choice. I'll read it again. Women as oppressed people act out of necessity, not out of choice. They're forced into, in some cases, their actions. It's not really that they have a choice. They pick the best of two evils. They mitigate by in some cases having to go along with or endorse whatever. So, any thoughts, Dave or Effie? Or anybody else, if they're maybe not available to mic.
A little liberal.
To me, it's like cultural. To me, it sounds cultural.
Okay, and actually, it's radical because it was spoken by Carol Hanisch, who is the woman who wrote the original essay. It wasn't originally titled until it was, she had a different title, but it was published in a I'll just say in a periodical, after which it went absolutely viral, you know, for that day. She wrote The Personal is Political. Carol Hanisch. So number 6, our men think earning money and ordering around others is where power lies. They don't think power is in the hands of the woman who takes care of everyone all day long and gives birth to their children. So an individual expressing, you know, that the woman's role is still very, very valid and just not appreciated by men. And sorry, I should, oh, is that Topgore? Topgore on iPhone? Not certain who that is. Okay, no response. Henry, we'll move on to you. Our men think earning money and ordering around others is where power lies. They don't think power is in the hands of the woman who takes care of everyone all day long and gives birth to their children. Any thoughts, Henry?
He put it in the chat.
Oh, wow. Sorry, I can't see the chat. Okay, yes. And that's Malala Yousafzai. And a woman in harmony with her spirit. Oh, this, Annabelle, is for you. A woman in harmony with her spirit is like a river flowing. She goes where she will without pretense and arrives at her destination, prepared to be herself and herself only. So individual freedom.
That would be liberal.
And I tend to agree. It's Maya Angelou. And then we acknowledge the indispensable contribution which women make to society through the sensitivity, intuition, and other distinctive skill sets which they, more than men, tend to possess, and demand that the legitimate rights of women be respected based on the firm conviction that men and women are equal in dignity. And Jonathan, forgive me, I didn't cue you up, but I can read it again if you need. We acknowledge the indispensable contribution which women make to society through the sensitivity, intuition, and other distinctive skill sets which they, more than men, tend to possess, and demand that the legitimate rights of women be respected based on the firm conviction that men and women are equal in dignity.
Cultural.
Correct. Pope Francis. And this is, sorry. Okay, Trevor. I don't say women's rights. I say the constitutional principle of the equal citizenship stature of men and women. So addressing a constitutional principle of equality.
Radical.
Radical. Ruth Bader Ginsburg. If a man wants you, nothing can keep him away. If he doesn't want you, nothing can make him stay. And I think, Debby, we're back up to you. You need to not cue you in. If a man wants you, nothing can keep him away. If he doesn't want you, nothing can make him stay.
Liberal.
Yes. Oprah Winfrey. Katja, your turn again. Man is not the enemy here, but the fellow victim. The real enemy is women's denigration of themselves. This is a tough one. So you're welcome to span a couple of them if you want. Gotcha. Man is not the enemy here, but the fellow victim. The real enemy is women's denigration, means putting themselves down. Women's denigration of themselves. In other words, putting themselves down. Depreciating themselves.
I'm hesitant, maybe cultural.
Okay, it actually would end up in the radical stream, because I'll tell you who it is. Betty Friedan, who wrote the book, The Feminine Mystique, which was sort of the catalyst that really took the women's movement off. But at the same time, it was more, and she possibly could be, would have been, she's dead now, but would have been a liberal feminist more, but the women putting themselves down is in a sense what radical feminism is absolutely wanting to get women away from doing. And much as, yes, self-esteem in cultural feminism, self-esteem in liberal feminism wants to build women up, as Tarana Burke put it at one point, that's kind of fake. It's kind of sort of like, using a lot of praise and good sounding things, warm fuzzies, to try to build and elevate women, as opposed to radical feminism doesn't want women to put themselves down. And Elder Tess will call us out on this, at different times and so on, that don't put it that way, and just, because often as women, we have that tendency, we qualify things, and I don't know if this makes sense, but, well, I'll leave it at that. oh, sorry, this is Allie again. You're supposed to stay pretty for men, but not so pretty that you tempt them too much or that you threaten other women, because you're supposed to be a part of the sisterhood. So, Allie, it accepts the fact that you want to stay pretty. Appearance counts, for men.
I would again go back to saying that's liberal feminism.
Aha, good job. And that's the monologue that the actor America Ferrera speaks as she's playing this human character, Gloria, in the Barbie movie. And the worker, Carlton. The worker can unionize, go out on strike. Mothers are divided from each other, tied to their children by compassionate bonds. Our wildest strikes have most often taken the form of physical or mental breakdown. So the worker can unionize, go out on strike. Mothers are divided from each other, tied to their children by compassionate bonds. Our wildest strikes have most often taken the form of physical or mental breakdown. And it's a hard one, Carlton, but I'll let you give a stab at it if you're wanting to.
Maybe like a little cultural and also a little liberal in it.
Good for you. And it actually is cultural, because the woman, Adrienne Rich, who quoted it, or who I'm quoting, is a cultural feminist. So good job. And last one for
Debby,
yes.
could we go back? Could you read that one before the last one again?
Okay. Okay. You're supposed to stay pretty for men, but not so pretty that you tempt them too much or that you threaten other women, because you're supposed to be a part of the sisterhood.
I would think that one would be cultural feminism, because a liberal feminist woman wouldn't say you have to be pretty for a man. She would say you have to be pretty for yourself. And a cultural feminist would say that you would have to be pretty for you're a man. And a radical feminist would say beauty is not on the surface, it's the whole person or something.
And very good comment. Very good comment. And that's it. In the Barbie movie, it probably does swing between cultural, because it's part of the culture, right? They've tapped into the pulse of what's trending right now. And I mean, over the last couple of years, because obviously the movie wasn't just made in July, but so very good point. And nuanced, because it was something that I hadn't even thought of. So
I agree with him. I totally agree with that, actually.
Yeah, no, I do too. So thank you, Jonathan, for taking us back, because yeah, that's an excellent point.
I think that there can be a difference between, like, the person who says the quote, they might be a known liberal or radical, or a known liberal or cultural feminist, but there's contradiction in their beliefs a lot of the time. So the person can say something and they might be known as a liberal feminist, but they can still be saying things that are culturally feminist. So it's not necessarily who the person is determines whether this is liberal or cultural. It really is, it shows that there's like a misunderstanding of what they actually believe in, and the lines cross sometimes.
Jonathan, another excellent point. In part, that was one of the remarks that Angela Saini in her book, The Patriarchs, makes. And part of the reason why I started with definitions a little wee bit, she makes the point that people use these words. Patriarchy is another one of those buzzwords. it's just come out into societal use, right, in more recent time. And she said a lot of people do not understand in what way they're using it, like what it even means, and how they're using it, and therefore the very meaning of patriarchy changes over time. And that's it. Cultural buzzwords, in a sense, people can end up saying, quote unquote, the right thing, and it sounds good. You know, as Elder Tess said about libertarianism, it looks beautiful. It sounds lovely. But at the same time, you start peeling back the layers and you recognize that no, it's a serpent in disguise kind of thing. So Jonathan, excellent point. And I had the disadvantage, I knew who was speaking. So I probably got a little too focused on that. As you say, there is it is wise to disassociate who it is that's speaking, you know, and what supposedly in their lifestyle maybe that they're portraying, as opposed to what their words are actually stating and what they more importantly are meaning. So last one, and this is, I've forgotten who it was. Henry, I'll just go with you if that's all right. You may have to put it in the chat. Human rights are women's rights, and women's rights are human rights. Let us not forget that among those rights are the right to speak freely and the right to be heard. Too many women in too many countries speak the same language of silence. So, Henry, any ideas? You can go in the chat. Good job, radical, Henry says. And that was Hillary Clinton, or is Hillary Clinton speaking. So thank you very much for that. And thank you for participating. I mean, this took a little longer than what I had anticipated that it would. But at the same time, I wanted to, partly because I know I myself am wanting to really zone in when I'm reading even articles or in conversation with others, whatever, to really begin to distinguish between statements that are cultural or liberal feminist expressions, and in a sense really be able to rethink it. How would that same concept be voiced by a radical feminist? Elder Tess, in one of her messages, I can remember it right now, just said I'm wanting to draw it back to it. A liberal feminist will often speak to things like pornography, and they'll be big on individual choice. I mean, if a woman chooses to be a prostitute, that's fine, etc. But at the same time, with many of them, there'll also be sort of this moral affront, you know, on moral grounds that they'll sort of speak against something, or oh, isn't it that person, you know, they're just so morally degraded, someone up on stage that's, you know, scantily clad and this, that, and the other thing, you know, they'll look at it through the eyes of morality, as opposed to a radical feminist. Elder Tess explains, you know, they're going to be the one that will consider what circumstances and what created the very circumstance or position that this person is in. Like it's a lot broader than, it comes back to what we were talking about a few moments back about oppression. Does the woman have a choice? In a lot of oppressive cultures, oppressive situations, and Angela Saini goes through this quite a bit with a lot of different groups, Iran, India, various places around the world. Do the women have agency? Are they really able to make free choices? And in many cases, as I described it earlier, they're between a rock and a hard place, and they have to pick the lesser of two evils. One of the things that Angela Saini brings out in the Patriarchs is the example of Boko Haram and kidnapping all of these young girls, and how many of the girls, not all of them, but many of the girls that ended up getting released ended up going back to captivity. They went back to Boko Haram. And there's a syndrome. It's called Stockholm syndrome, where in cases of kidnapping or different circumstances, but particularly in kidnapping, a person in captivity with the kidnapper ends up, just to cope initially, becoming friends, quote unquote, with the abductor. But as time continues and possibly not being freed or found, it works out that that person becomes enmeshed with the kidnapper, and then can even lead to where they don't want to be freed from that person. And there are one or two situations that I back in time a little bit, had found in the news where somebody actually ended up marrying their captor. And so these young girls ended up believing they had more agency, they had a better situation back in captivity, and in a sense freely went back, and they were choosing that. But is that real freedom? We spoke last time in terms of, or 2 times back, I think, in terms of the hijab. And are women choosing to wear the hijab? Yes, fundamentalist Muslim, for certain, but are they choosing to wear that by their own choice? Or have they been culturally conditioned and, in a sense, forced? Because if they don't, there are consequences that they don't even want to look at. So freedom, this is one of the things Elder Tess is cautioning us to really, we must understand freedom, and we must understand patriarchy and sexism. Okay, I'm just quickly going to, I had wanted to highlight 5 women, and I think in a sense we sort of did. So we unpacked a little bit of the timeline and just going through some of these quotes. I'll add another couple that we didn't talk about. 1989, Ann Hopkins, Price Waterhouse v. Hopkins, Supreme Court case that she won. 1991, Anita Hill, Clarence Thomas, his sexual harassment of her. And when it came to light, it definitely helped spark, it gave some impetus further to feminism. And it's interesting, 2 days ago, Clarence Thomas, some of you may have seen, was being written up about in the media, I guess I'll put it. Just the tip of the iceberg. These well, now it's up to 4 billionaires, and the ProPublica reporter who uncovered it all and reported on it, faithful journalist, he said there's probably more. There's more yet that's going to come out to light, but all these, private jet trips and 38 vacations, including one that Thomas himself never disclosed at any time, on a yacht to the Bahamas, all his family and him touring the Bahamas, and just on and on and on. And part of the point is, number one, why didn't he disclose? Well, why was it even allowed in the first place, and not the ethics committee, weighing in, because we're to avoid the appearance of all evil. But secondarily, him not revealing it. Most of the things, I think, and I'm just friends with so-and-so billionaire, and so-and-so other billionaire, the one that is dead now, I forgot his name, David. Anyway, we just sit on the porch and chat. And the third thing is Thomas himself, over all time, and this has spanned 30 years, he himself has presented himself as a very humble, roots in a sense in poverty, with some of this university shut down and so on, with some of the money that's available for people of color and disadvantaged individuals. He partook of that himself, but he voted, shut the door. They can pull themselves up by their bootstraps kind of attitude. So Clarence Thomas certainly remains in the news, as does Anita Hill, just because of all that transpired after 1991. Hillary Clinton, 2016, she first won the GOP candidacy, beating Bernie Sanders, and then eventually in the election in November, beat Donald Trump in terms of the popular vote, but she actually ended up losing the election. If anyone could say the election was rigged, it would have been the Democrats, not the Republicans, at any rate. And it may have been in part with some of this Russian interference, because Putin hates Hillary Clinton, so. And then 2018, Christine Blasey Ford, in reference to Brett Kavanaugh's confirmation for the Supreme Court, and it worked out that, again, some of these other things, she was insulted and put down, threatened, death threats, all these different things happening. And then in 2023, E. Jean Carroll, her civil trial in May against Donald Trump, and where he was found liable of sexual harassment and battery and defamation, has to pay her $5 million. But then, not only did they win that, but her court case, her lawyer was able to amend the application and add on the further disparaging remarks that Trump made the day of May 10th was the trial, I believe, or May 9th was the trial, and right on May 10th, he was out there on social media totally disparaging her, and etc. So he'll face more about that. Okay, and then I had some tidbits that I wanted to just update us with, and actually I will end up sharing the screen just for a moment, just because I want to make a couple of comments about this, if I may. Okay, so last time, let's see, slideshow. Last time, a couple of times back, I had used the parable of a firefly. And I'm not sure if everyone sort of understood why I was doing that, whatever, in a poem that ended up in the public record. This is a Genji firefly in Japan. And this firefly is the diameter around, like the middle, the circumference around the middle, not the diameter, pardon me, the circumference around the middle is as thick as, I'll use penny, even though we don't have any more Canadian pennies around, but so it's a big firefly. And it's up until 2020, it had still been around. The Industrial Revolution in Japan's history and so on, you know, it had wreaked havoc. It started, you know, this is a firefly that needs, in a sense, fairly pristine habitat. They need clean water, and they need moss along riverbanks. And it's something that is prevalent in different, has been prevalent in different areas of Japan. The Japanese, you know, fireflies became something that they valued in their art and etc. I mean, they even made a little image on the left, or on the right rather, is as it says in the caption, lantern with fireflies in it. Rather clever idea in some respects, but at any rate, it's the fireflies themselves are in danger. Climate change has affected things so much. The waterways are no longer clean, particularly some of their primary habitat waterways in Japan. And moss has been decimated and etc. So anyway, some university students and obviously some of their instructors and so on ended up starting a program whereby they were going to rescue and rehabilitate and increase the numbers of these fireflies, because the Genji firefly in Japan is so highly thought of just across the whole country, the whole nation, that they didn't want to lose it. They didn't want it going extinct. And so as a consequence, in their program, they actually, you know, it's quite something, but they end up getting some of the eggs, and you know, I mean, talk about a lot of intensive work, but they get, I'll just say 30,000 eggs, because a female firefly, once mated, is able to lay thousands and thousands of eggs. But even in nature, obviously not all of them survive. And so in more recent time, the university students have been able to get 5,000 firefly nymphs, I think they're called, I'm not certain, but that have survived in their laboratory, you know, their lab setting. And of those, they know they'll get quite a few, but where they put the fireflies is they've got their own, they actually built it, a river and moss on the banks and so on. So it's a very cultured environment and very, very protected. And so these fireflies will end up, because evidently only a few grow to the point of being an adult firefly, whereby then they glow. It's not until they're at that age, that stage, that's where the glow comes from, and they're ending up able to mate, which is what the glowing part is to help attract in a mate. And therefore they're hoping that they're going to be able to slowly and steadily increase the numbers. The big test will be, are there going to be natural habitats where these fireflies eventually could be released into again? Because at the moment, the pollution in the natural rivers and so on is still such that fireflies just wouldn't survive. So I thought that I'd just add that little tidbit in. It's a bit of a further factoid on fireflies. But the other thing I wanted to shortlist and just update was in terms of Mums for Liberty. This is, Republicans. Anyway, Mums for Liberty ended up, their most recent stunt was in a library during Pride Month. So this was still back in June, but during Pride Month, they ended up going in, this was down in California, in a San Diego library. They went in and they removed, they signed out all of the books, there were a few hundred, on LGBTQ+, anything to do with what they felt was any kind of flavoring in support LGBTQ+. So they signed all these books out of the library. Well, it turned out that a little notation, maybe the librarian put this in the local paper and possibly online, more than likely online. And it turned out in a matter of just a few days, not only did people come and drop off replacement books, but people, they started a fund, not the library, but an individual, they started a fund, and it turns out that they got $15,000 towards replacing these books and buying more. And then the city of San Diego matched their what had been raised. So they ended up with $30,000. And so they were coming away and they said, we want to thank Mums for Liberty, because if they hadn't done what they did, we would never have received such a windfall as what we've now gotten. And it was interesting because a few days later, it turns out that all of the original books ended up being restored to the library, probably with egg on face of those that ended up doing it. As we know, I mean, the Barbie movie did get released there in July. Within the first week, had made over $1 billion in revenue, and it's interesting because and a lot of people are viewing it as a good thing, very definitely, that it's going to bring it more into the conversation. I mean, hordes and hordes of people seeing it, whether in China or, wherever, obviously by the sounds of it, it's keeping the conversation going. And in a sense, just on a very surface note, there can be something good about agitating a topic, just generally. But at the same time, as we know, deeper down, it's all the subtleties of difference in terms of the types of feminism that we've gone through that end up being very, very much problematic. And I mean, they've got astronaut Barbies, female astronaut Barbies. There's a young girl up in Nunavut, actually, that ended up, well, she was attending school with Inuit roots, but she was attending school 2006 and ended up entering a contest. And so her contest won, and it was Mattel making an Inuit designed Barbie, Inuit legend doll, sort of a collector's item kind of thing. But again, it still promotes the whole yes, culture, but also it's still the Barbie image that's being attached to it in a sense, which is the, as we know, the ultra thin and et cetera, et cetera. And two other things I wanted to mention was the young people nowadays, and Elder Parminder in his message brings this out, that there's hope with the young people in terms of patriarchy, that they're in a sense breaking the mold in some cases, some are. And in more recent time, some time has been put into producing articles talking of that very thing, how young people are disassociating themselves from their family, and where parents have a toxic relationship with their young teenage or older teenage or adult children, that those people, maybe after a period of trying to, trying to change the parent, a dad or a mom or both, they eventually cut themselves off and just say, I don't need this toxicity in my life. And that's happening more and more and more in more recent time, that kind of thing occurring. And the other thing was in terms of incarcerated women and how the increase up to, I think the stats most recently were 2020, but it's continued, now that we're into 2023, the number of women is exponentially on the rise. Women that are being incarcerated, and far outnumbering the number of men that are being put in prison. And when you think some of the abortion laws and just some of the different things that are unfolding, where women can be charged with whatever, people aiding and abetting somebody having an abortion, or, just some of the different things that as it plays out over time, those statistics for women are probably even going to go higher. And in some cases, women that are pregnant and have a child while they're serving time, treatment that they receive, and or even being even allowed to have their baby with them or not, or certainly afterwards, even when they're released, just any supports. I mean, this is a whole other area where the patriarchy leaves a heavy boot print for women. And so we're sort of time. I will, for a moment, I'll just share screen, perhaps one last time. It's different. Maybe it displays it now. And first, I think I'll just go back to the board for a moment, so you can see it. The chapters of the book, in that one little box over to the left. An introduction, and then her chapter title is just simply one word: domination, exception, genesis, destruction, restriction, alienation, revolution, transformation, and then her afterword. And I'll just quickly skip ahead for the blur. It's interesting because in North America, this is the book, Angela Saini, The Patriarchs, The Origins of Inequality. In Europe, this is the book, Angela Saini, The Patriarchs, How Men Came to Rule. Because, I mean, I was aware of this a long time back, but usually books published in the two different markets are given different titles. And we, in fact, found that with Gina Rippon's book on the ungendered brain and so on, different titles, North American to European, UK. And anyway, that's Angela Assini, just in case you're wondering. And so, whoops, two of the big things, because I know my time has gone by, two of the big things that I want to address, and Elder Parminder brings this out, and it's also touched on a little wee bit in, I can't remember which one of the articles, but at any rate, one of the things is in reference to just pressures. You know, it does work out that there are pressures a quote from Angela Assini: "Patriarchy is a warped system." And you think about it, and most of us would agree with that, if not all of us. And yeah, I could bring out some other highlights, but I think I'll move on. Well, step a little bit. Anyway, I'll just speak to Elder Parminder's, one of his main points is in turn, well, a couple of the points. We can't avoid patriarchal thinking. We've been immersed in it. The world has been immersed in it. Now, Angela Assini does bring out, she believes that unlike the book I quoted, the one author, Sir Robert Fulmer from 1680, his Patriarcha, I think I put Patriarchs on the whiteboard in that first session, but it's Patriarcha that he titled his book. It goes from father to community to kingdom progression. She argues against that, and she is an evolutionist. She's an engineer by training, also a bioscientist, and has quite a few attributes. But at any rate, she argues the other way around. Patriarchy started state, moved down to community, and ended up at the family, clan, tribe level. In part because the state was very focused. They knew they needed population, they needed people. And as a consequence, they wanted people to be loyal to the state, people to be willing to have children, and many of them, and people who would be willing for their sons to fight for the state. So in a sense, that was sort of her focus. But as we know, the Eden to Eden model lets us know that sexism, patriarchy is the oldest form of oppression in the earth. And much as she also, in her research, felt everything is like it's not a monolithic patriarchy overspreading everywhere. There's variations on a theme, and in some cases there are matrilineal societies, matriarchal societies, you know, and so there's a lot of variety, and it's like a patchwork across the earth. And so she said, in that end, there's hope, because patriarchy is fragile. It's not a case that we have to lock ourselves into something. that patriarchy isn't natural, that patriarchy, at any point in time in history, we can choose how we're going to organize ourselves, how society will be organized. And therefore it can be undone. You know, there's hope, in a sense, is sort of how she ends the book. But we have to be diligent. We have to bring back community, sort of as Hillary Clinton's article on the weaponization of loneliness just recently was saying, we have to get back to community, reconnecting with other human beings. Sort of was put on hold for many through COVID and that kind of thing. So Elder Parminder's points that he's wanting us to be aware of is we can't avoid patriarchy. And in a sense, it's subtle because there are pressures that get put on anyone, people even who are against patriarchy, but there are pressures that get exerted whereby we end up becoming enablers or supporters of a patriarchal system, just simply because it's, in some cases, as I alluded to, you know, it's the lesser of two evils. It's easier, the easier road. Fighting takes effort, et cetera, or just in part because of the mindset that we are clinging to. It doesn't necessarily get eradicated. And anyway, you know, I know my time is going by, and I did want to finish with one other thing. And I'm just debating. You know, I think I'll go for it. I mean, it could be so much more said, but time is of the essence. And I'm not regretting that I did that little cute quiz, as I termed it, and so on, despite it going a little longer than what I had thought that perhaps it would. Because awareness is everything. And I know I want to really, well, as the expression says, clue into where these situations are cropping up, where, you know, how it flavors our conversation, my conversation, how it flavors this or that. And awareness is the beginning of when we're able to stop ourselves and, oh, no, I'm not going to say that, or I'm not going to think that, or that's not the right stream, you know, that kind of thing. And in conclusion, I'll maybe just say as well that something all of us need to be aware of is this topic is, in a sense, well, as I said at the beginning, a huge one, as well as being profound, prophetic, right? The testing subject, but it also is a triggering subject, one that a lot of women, you know, the Me Too movement was 12 million people just in the first short period of time responded with that hashtag Me Too. And therefore, all of us can be aware of and be empathetic towards that we don't know anybody else's background story and just all the things perhaps that they face. And just because we haven't doesn't mean that we aren't to be empathetic for. And little children growing up encounter things, little boys growing up as well, but and then teenage girls and all the body shaming and the pressure and all the different things and the social media mixed in there. We want to be aware. And anyway, I want to close with, it's a little bit of a story. And hopefully it won't be too long. I'm just reading it. It did end up with a rather poignant photograph from the Guardian at the end that, a little girl, and in pigtails no less, but with her hand up. Stop. Anyway, fighting the patriarchy, one grandpa at a time. Posted by a little girl's mom. A grown man looms behind my 3-year-old daughter. Occasionally, he will poke or tickle her, and she responds by shrinking, smaller and smaller with each unwanted advance. I imagine her trying to become slight enough to slip out of her booster seat and slide under the table. When my mother views this scene, she sees playful taunting, a grandfather engaging with his granddaughter. May, my tone cuts through the din of a familiar family gathering together. She does not look at me. May, I start again. You can tell him no, May. If this isn't okay, you could say something like, Papa, please back up. I would like some space for my body. As I say the words, my stepfather, the bulldog, leans in a little closer, hovering just above her head. His tenebrous, which means dark, gloomy, dim, his tenebrous grin haunts me as my daughter accordions her 30-pound frame, hoping to escape his tickles and hot breath. I repeat myself with a little more force. She finally peeks up at me. Mama, can you say it? Surprised. A 3-year-old girl doesn't feel comfortable defending herself against a grown man? A man that has stated he loves and cares for her over and over again, and yet stands here showing zero concern for her wishes about her own body. I ready myself for battle. Papa, please back up. May would like some space for her body. My voice is firm but cheerful. He does not move. Papa, I should not have to ask you twice. Please back up. May is uncomfortable. Oh, relax, he says, ruffling her wispy blonde hair. The patriarchy stands, patronizing me in my own kitchen. We're just playing. His southern drawl does not charm me. No, you were playing. She was not. She's made it clear that she would like some space. Now, please back up. I can play how I want with her, he says, straightening his posture. My chest tightens. The sun-bleached hairs on my arms stand at attention as this man, who has been my father figure for more than 3 decades, enters the battle ring. No, you cannot play however you want with her. It's not okay to have fun with someone who does not want to play. He opens his mouth to respond, but my rage is palpable through my measured response. I wonder if my daughter can feel it. I hope she can. He retreats to the living room and my daughter stares up at me. Her eyes, a starburst of blue and hazel, shine with admiration for her mama. The dragon has been slayed for now. My own mother is silent. She refuses to make eye contact with me. This is the same woman who shut me down when I told her about a sexual assault I had recently come to acknowledge. This is the same woman who was abducted by a car full of strangers as she walked home one night. She fought and screamed until they kicked her out. Speeding away, they ran over her ankle and left her with a lifetime of physical and emotional pain. This is the same woman who said nothing, who could say nothing, as her boss and his friends sexually harassed her for years. This is the same woman who married one of those friends. When my mother views this scene, she sees her daughter overreacting. She sees me, quote unquote, making a big deal out of nothing. Her concerns lie more in maintaining the status quo and cradling my stepdad's toxic ego than in protecting the shrinking 3-year-old in front of her. When I view this scene, I am both bolstered and dismayed. My own strength and refusal to keep quiet is the result of hundreds, probably thousands of years of women being mistreated and their protests ignored. It is the result of watching my own mother suffer quietly at the hands of too many men. It is the result of my own mistreatment and my solemn vow to be part of ending this cycle. It would be so easy to see a little girl being taught that her wishes don't matter, that her body is not her own, that even people she loves will mistreat and ignore her, and that all of this is okay in the name of other people, men, having fun. But what I see instead is a little girl watching her mama. I see a little girl learning that her voice matters, that her wishes matter. I see a little girl learning that she is allowed and expected to say no. I see her learning that this is not okay. I hope my mom is learning something too. Fighting the patriarchy, one grandpa at a time. Let's pray. Dear God of heaven and earth, we want to be your people. We want to be used by you to undo the curses that have been there since Eden. Give us the grace and discernment to hear others, to examine our own heart, to cast off everything that has any vestige of patriarchy attached to it, sexism. We know that the Sunday law is approaching. We know that the test facing the world is this very subject. And we want to be used of you to be the light in the world. Help us to this end. We have much to learn and much yet to unlearn. Be with each of us in Jesus' name and for his sake. Amen.